Hello everyone, this is Mark Major at the Action Figuratorium. That is the name of this studio I have dubbed behind me. I'm actually hunkered down in a bigger studio, southeast Portland, Milwaukee to be exact. And it is still checkered hat weather. For those of you who are somewhat on the fence, it's still on, okay? So you do not take the checkered hats off. We're still going with that. Anyways, today I'm going to be kind of revisiting something I did a topic on earlier. If you look back on the channel, there's a video called Who Owns Masters of the Universe? Is it Universal or is it Mattel? When I did that video, like a lot of people, you're probably thinking, oh, that's going to be a deep dive into some murky waters. Well, it was actually a shallow dive into some kind of pristine clear waters. And you should check that video out. But today I'm going to be looking specifically just at this one piece of evidence that I looked at in the other video, and that is specifically the lawsuit of Mattel Inc. versus Donald F Glut. And it's kind of a fun read. And I have some ideas as to why I think Mr. Donald F Glut ended up in court against Mattel. So you guys should all stick around. Okay, thank you to everyone who endures the intro, but branding is important and it's a cool song. So let's just move forward with today's presentation, and that is Mattel Inc. versus Donald F Glut. So we're going to split this up into three sections. The first part, I'm going to give you the tiniest bit of background using a Masters of the Universe's fans blog, where he has a chronological timeline of when things happened in terms of the Motu brand, from its creation up to the 80s he goes. I think he goes till about 1987. We're only going to go to a couple of the entries in the beginning just to get a taste of what we're talking about in this lawsuit, because this lawsuit is about copyright and it's about a couple of mini comic books, and it's a lot of fun. Second part, I'm going to actually read through the filings from Mattel's lawyers, and they have included as evidence this interview that was on Donald's website, where he admitted that he doesn't own the copyrights, and it's kind of a key piece in this. And then third, after we go through that, I'm just going to say essentially why I think Donald Glut went into this this legal, it's a catastrophe, and I'll show you why it's a catastrophe. So let's begin at the beginning, and we're going to switch over now into browser cam. And I know the production value, this is clearly number one toy YouTube channel. Let's just admit it. Come on, production alone. All right, so there is a page on the Battle Ram blog where he does a Masters of the Universe timeline, and the first thing in the timeline is just a sketch from 1971, and he just puts it in there not because it's the beginnings of Motu, but because the sketch was later reused, resampled, inspired the Skeletor figure. But the real sort of beginning of He-Man is this character named Torak. It's, again, by the same guy, Mark Taylor. He is a conceptual artist who illustrates and draws and comes up with ideas. He's like an ideas man who puts ideas into visuals, and they use those to sell. So in this case, he's got this idea for this Barbarian Man. They were looking for ideas of a line that would replace Mattel's Big Jim line, which was kind of like a G.I. Joe. Not a Joe, a Jim, you know what I mean? It's one of those things. So he does things that G.I. Joe doesn't do. Like G.I. Joe goes out and hunts men, and Big Jim goes out and hunts tigers, that kind of thing. which, by the way, they reused the tiger from one of those big gyms as that He-Man battle cat. So I hope you guys are happy. Now, this is 79, this image here, where he's coming up with the Barbarian figure, and then based upon this, a guy worked at Mattel named Roger Sweet comes up with these three sort of, they're not prototypes, they are mock-ups. Essentially, the idea is to take the muscle-bound dude and say maybe he could be military man with like a tank head, maybe he could be spaceman with a Boba Fett head, or maybe he's just some sort of goofy barbarian out on the plains, the Hun, as they call him. And so this is what was pitched at a Mattel product conference where you just go and you pitch ideas. They pitched this. This middle guy, the barbarian, got selected, and which, you know, good for him. And then if you go through the timeline, you can see in 1980, in the summer, they're coming up with all the lists of things that they want this character to be. And then we start seeing that Mark Taylor, that's a little mock-up there that somebody sculpted in early 82, but we're back in 81, where Mark Taylor is now sketching out other characters, doing Birdman or Stratos, Merman, he's doing Castle Grayskull, the Battle Cat, he's sketching all this stuff. So this stuff in 1981 exists, it's been greenlit, but they're developing the characters, it exists in sketches, okay? And they work on this all through 81 of May into June, and at some point here in late 81, eventually we get first use in commerce, which means that they have trademarked He-Man and Masters of the Universe, and once you trademark something, you then have to put the trademark on a product and start using it. If you don't, it is abandoned. So they first started using it in December of 81, probably around Christmas time, I guess. They wanted to get into the kids' Christmas rush. And along this time is also when the first 4 mini-comics were published, okay? The mini-comics were written by Donald F Glut. He was approached by Mattel. He actually worked for a company that was owned by Mattel, so he was technically not a direct employee, but he was in the business, and they commissioned him to write 4 comics, as well as a thing called The Treatment. The Treatment is this sort of Bible from which other people who are working on the line will go back and read, and from there they'll get the history of Eternia and He-Man and all this stuff, and it's all in The Treatment there, right? And it's all copywritten by Mattel in 1981. 11/28 is when these were officially published. And remember, the comics went into the toy, so you didn't read the comic and go, oh, it'd be cool if there was a He-Man toy. No, you bought the He-Man toy and then you read the comic. That doesn't make, I don't know, this marketing is, gotta try something, you know? You gotta try something. So that's all really kind of the background we need to know on the He-Man side of things, because everything in this lawsuit is about those 4 mini-comics and The Treatment. Nothing else going forward in this. The lawsuit itself specifically was filed in 2013. Now what happened with that was Donald F Glut, this guy here, he went and filed some type of a addendum or a change of copyright notice to those 4 mini-comics and The Treatment. And so Mattel, in response to him claiming those, rather than sit back and say, oh, you know, go for it, you know, they sued him. And so a lot of people think that the lawsuit was Donald Glut versus Mattel, that it's David and Goliath, that Mattel had stolen this guy's property, and then he was now, years later, you know, like he was, I don't know, like he was coming back and he was going to get his property back, that kind of thing. He was suing them. That's not the case. He claimed copyright on these, and then Mattel took him to court, and they do that because him claiming that, right, creates fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD. And you can actually look this entry up in the Wikipedia. It is a type of marketing, negative marketing campaign used by companies against other companies, and one of the best things to do is to sue a company so that you get these headlines. Company A sues Company B, and you don't even actually have to have a case. You just have to have a headline. You just have to go to court. It can get kicked out the next day. It doesn't matter if it brings a headline. It causes fear, uncertainty, and doubt as to who owns or what is up with the property, because there's a lawsuit in the news. So he was causing a bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and Mattel had every right to preemptively sue him before he sued them. So he took, or they took him to court. This is one of the things that a lot of these like He-Man forums and stuff don't really seem to pick up on, is who the plaintiff is here. It is Mattel and their lawyers. And now we're going to, in part 2 here, we're going to actually, we're going to take a look at what it is that they wrote. And helping me out is my Lawbot. Some call him LeBeau. We're not calling him LeBeau. He's going to be Lawbot for this, okay? So you guys need to take it down one single notch. All right, here we go. Switching over to some court documents. This is exciting, folks. Some of you watching this may not even know that any of this ever happened, and that's okay. It's kind of a bummer on both sides, really. So here we are. We're looking at what Mattel's lawyers came up with. It opens with, "This case concerns a baseless and time-barred attempt to grab a piece of Mattel's world-famous Masters of the Universe property by a writer who admitted long ago that he had no ownership or financial interest in this property." Now, as a piece of evidence, there is this interview that they have attached, and it is hilarious because the kid asking the questions is such a fanatic of Masters of the Universe, and Donald Glut does not care at all. It's like the William Shatner, like Saturday Night Live skit where he freaks out at the fans. He can't take it anymore. It's kind of like that. It's pretty funny. It's what attracted me to make this video. So they go on to say that Donald Glut was a work for hire. That's essentially a big part of their argument, that he took a job writing a story, handed in the story, got paid, that's it. Doesn't own anything. The other thing is that they have been doing Masters of the Universe. Mattel's been doing Masters of the Universe for a really long time, okay? It's like TV shows, movies, multiple different toy lines by the time 2013 comes along. If there was a grievance, he should have brought it up a long time ago. He shouldn't have been like, well, I was just looking and noticing that, No, Donald, if there was a problem, it should have been in 1981, in early December, right after they published the mini comics, because that's your window. That's your window to say something. So, Glut completed his assignment and was paid his work for hire, and per the work for hire agreement, Mattel released its initial line of toy action figures in 81 and/or 82, which were packaged with illustrated versions of Glut's mini comics. Okay, so, like I said before, you had to buy the toys to get the comic, and the whole point of the comic was to sell toys. So that's hey, if you don't got a show, that's the next best thing. I'm not gonna argue with that. Goes on here, Mattel's informed believes and based thereon alleges that from 81 to the present, Glut was aware of the ongoing exploitation of Masters of the Universe. Like I said, he's waited a long time to make his claim. All right, so let's check out some more of these exhibits here that they list from the interview. The interview, of course, is attached to it. If you go to this website, lawow.org, you can find this on there. It is the Mattel Inc. versus Donald F Glut et al. And in a written interview in 2001, Glut admitted that the work he did for Mattel in connection with Masters of the Universe property was done as work for hire. Glut stated that his And this is a quote from the interview: "Work was simply done as a work for hire, and that he was only paid his flat rate work for hire fees." And what's great is that if you read the interview, he's bitching. He's bitching that he just went along, took the contract, wrote the stuff, and then, and then got out. He got paid, and that was it. Never looked at it again. Also in the interview, he claims that he didn't watch the TV show and the movie. He had no interest in any of that, so he didn't follow any of that stuff. He just totally checked out. He wasn't, in the interview, Glut complained that he did this work for relatively little pay and with no piece of the action. I like that term. And that he wasn't getting any royalties on toys or other items based on his concepts. Glut further explained that when Mattel contacted him about working on a latter separate project, he didn't want to get into the same situation as on Masters, which meant that he kind of got burned. Where I was literally creating things that became toys, cartoon shows, movies, etc., but for which I got no future rewards, only my flat rate work for hire fees. So he pretty much admits in the interview that he was working for hire, that he didn't get paid for the toys. He's grumpy about it. He doesn't get any kind of kickback for this stuff. These things that he put in motion. There's a bunch of claims in the interview of some of the things that he created, like some names and some characters he brought in to sort of balance out the story. In this interview, Glut even described his work for hire experience with the Masters of the Universe property as one that he has never repeated, stating that his work on Masters of the Universe taught me one basic lesson: don't create anything original, especially concepts that someone else will make millions of dollars from, which they did, which he is admitting to that they did, and therefore he is actually saying that he's really saying that he's not owed money. It's a lesson I've managed to stick to since my days with He-Man and the gang. So he learned a lesson working on He-Man. That is, if you go in, you create something really cool, and you just get paid for it. The same thing is actually true of software developers, these guys who go in, work for a company, develop all these cool services, all these Twitters and YouTubes and Instagrams, things like that, and then the guy who creates the back button or something, and then of course he's it's just I got paid a sandwich in a car, that kind of thing, like the way they ripped off old bluesmen. And I think we can all learn a lesson from Donald F Glut. And next time you deal with a big company and you give them your ideas in comic book story form, Mattel is informed and believes, and based thereon alleges that as a result of the change in his story as described above, Glut filed and obtained a copyright registration for the treatment. The treatment is that sort of Bible that he came up with. And what's funny about that is in the interview he says that he wrote the treatment and then they kicked it back to him with changes. So, I agree that you may have come up with stuff, but you're also edited and forced to put things in, and so it's tough to say that you own it. I definitely could see a partial ownership, but a full ownership. So Glut filed and obtained a copyright registration for the treatment on January 24th, 2013. That's what prompted this lawsuit, is when he filed that. Mattel is further informed and believes that as a result of Glut's change of story, meaning he admitted he wasn't owed anything, and now he's trying to grab some of that action, he now contends that Mattel has infringed his copyright in the treatment, having released various Masters of the Universe products that exploit, adapt, copy, or use the storylines, plots, characters, and settings contained in the treatment. Glut has threatened to sue Mattel to establish his ownership, thus he's creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt of the copyrights and for copyright infringement. Glut claims that he has licensed his work to Mattel in '81 and that he will shortly have the right to terminate his license. Where have we heard that before? Someone's going to take away Mattel's license. Mattel's slapping this guy down. Mattel contends that Glut has no protectable copyright interest in the treatment, the mini-comics, or any of the Moat 2 products because Glut's work was performed as work for hire. And then claim for relief that they blah, 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 that he's not going to get the copyrights, and also that he has to pay their legal fees. Now, it's kind of a bit of a spoiler. If he made it this far, he didn't win did not win the court ruling. They ruled against him, and he had to pay Mattel's lawyer fees, and that is pretty brutal. I think you guys should, if you go check out this lawow.org, you'll see that they have, when you find this, they have attached the interview here as part of an exhibit. And the kid who interviews him really wants to know about He-Man, and Donald Glut does not care whatsoever at all about He-Man or, the kid tells him how much he loves it. He's like, the first 4 were canon, thanks, I'm flattered, but I never read or even saw the booklets done after the ones I did. So he totally bailed on the whole thing. He didn't even look at the other mini comics that were made, and they made a lot of mini comics. I have a bunch of them, and they're kind of terrible. He describes the process. Basically, I was given Polaroid photos of the prototype toys. I'd written lots of sword and sorcery and heroic adventure type stories by the time, and so it was relatively easy to come up with the personalities. Blah, 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 Tarzan and Conan. All this kind of crap. And it's funny how curmudgeon he is. Okay, so part 3 of this little breakdown here. Why the hell did Donald F Glut decide to get into a court battle with Mattel over this, knowing that if he won, the amount of untangling and accounting that would go on would be crushing, and so based on that alone, the courts not going to go with you. They're going to go with who has the most money, because that is what the laws are written for. The laws are written to protect money and those who own it. So why did he get in this? If at the time when he filed the registration termination thing and they took him to court, he could have easily, and even done this without a lawyer, contacted them and said, look, let's settle this out of court. Just send me some kind of a thing to sign, and I will sign it saying that I have no ownership with this, and I'll go out and I'll do press releases, and I will go say that I don't own it, and we'll never talk about this again. Just drop the lawsuit. Let's not go any further. It's a done deal. You won. But no, he decided to lawyer up and see if he could win in court, and so there's a couple things that make me think that he felt that he was in the right. And so the first thing is that I think that the story, The Fighting Foemen, was something that he had already written. It wasn't great. It was kind of pulp, but he was a pulp writer, or is a pulp writer. I guess he's still alive. And that it was sitting around, it was kicking around something he had, and they gave him the gig, and to just make his life easier and to not have to work very hard, he took that story that he had and he adopts it to this He-Man story. So in his mind, he sees that he took an original piece, like if you'd written a song and someone came in like, yeah, we need a jingle, and you're like, well, I got this, and it becomes like, the spearmint gum jingle or something like that, and you would think like, well, I gave them my, yeah, they hired me to write something, but I had this piece that I'd done and I'd written it, and now I gave it to them. And so in your mind, you see it as this gift that you have given these people. I gave them my jingle, but he wasn't paid for, per jingle. He was paid, to just turn in some pulp stories, and, let's be honest what he's fighting about, okay? It's all sort of, it's crap. So this is a thing that's in his mind, and so he's thinking, this is mine. This is my copyright. I'm gonna take it. Either that, or the other possibility is that it's possible that back in the day, a long, long time ago, back when you could you could smoke in the office, you could smoke on airplanes, right? For someone to get a hold of you, they had to do it by a landline telephone, which meant you had to be standing or sitting next to a phone plugged into a wall, and somebody had to know the number of that phone to call you, right? It's, getting a hold of people was, not that easy, and there was less people, it was more spread out, and it was just less accountability than we have today, where everything is being recorded and constantly regurgitated and replayed instantly back to us as it's happening. And so the amount of information of what is actually going on at any given time anywhere in the world is constantly flooding in if you want it, right? We were not at that age. We are at a different time, okay? And it's quite possible that somebody in that time might have verbally told Donald F Glut that, no, these are yours, you own them, man. These are, like, yeah, sure, it's all part of the corporation, but these are, that somebody might have actually said, these are yours, and you're going to get the copyright. Now, I don't know if that actually happened, but that's the only thing I can think of why he would kamikaze himself. And what you guys know is a case that there's no way he has a chance of winning whatsoever. I mean, especially when you look at the interview and what he said in the interview, he would have to have some sort of something going on other than wanting to, like, thinking he could somehow, put his name in the lottery and win something by changing this copyright over. I mean, it was like, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason why this guy would do any of this if he didn't have some kind of an inkling that something in here was actually his, and then he was owed something. And I think maybe the case is the first case, not that someone told him that, because otherwise he would have maybe tried to lean on that person, but rather that he took an existing story of his and he stuck the DNA of it into Motu, and all he got out of it was some probably weekly paycheck from his his regular publishing company. So that's the gist of this. And again, if you didn't know about this lawsuit or the details of it, maybe now you do. This author writer is still alive. He actually does quite a bit of YouTube interviews. He doesn't sound quite as old and cranky in the videos as he does in this particular these particular filings of this interview from 2001 with this kid who seems to be a real big fan. And he seems like a level-headed dude. He seems like a guy who's sort of in the pursuit or the chase of writing good stories or cool hero stories or whatever. But he also seems like a guy who knows what you have to do to get a paycheck. And that's what he did here. And that's what he was also trying to do, is maybe get a bigger paycheck. I think if I were him, I think a route that I would have tried, because he's obviously getting on in years, that I would have tried to go the Mattel Motu rights, is would have tried to build himself up as Motu's Stan Lee, right? Since he's got the pedigree for that, to go Stan Lee and approach Mattel's marketing department and say, hey, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to slum for your brand. I'm going to go on, I'll do a toy tour for you. I'll sign things. I'm going to say, create a job for himself where they pay him a bunch of money to be kind of a talking figurehead and work with him and not be in court. Because once you're in court with these guys, they're not going to go out and say, oh, we'd like to thank you for, because that's the thing they can do, is you get a lot of great PR if you take these old guys who worked for you in the past and you thank them for their many years of support. And if he was to come on their side and do that, I think they would have given him a paycheck. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think, but I will catch everybody real soon.